The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street as Sarah Martinez walked briskly toward her car. At 24, she had the kind of natural beauty that turned heads wherever she went, long dark hair that caught the sunlight, warm brown eyes, and a confident stride that spoke of someone comfortable in her own skin. But Sarah wasn't just another pretty face in the neighborhood. She was a recent graduate from Georgetown Law School, and more importantly, she was the daughter of FBI Director Robert Martinez, though very few people knew this fact. Sarah had always insisted on living her life without the shadow of her father's high-profile career. She rented a modest apartment in Arlington, Virginia, drove a simple Honda Civic, and worked part-time at a local community center while studying for the bar exam. Her father had offered her protection details countless times, but Sarah always refused. She wanted to be normal, to experience life like any other young woman her age. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Sarah had planned to drive to the community center where she volunteered, teaching English to immigrant families. She loved this work because it felt real and meaningful, far removed from the political world her father navigated daily. As she fumbled with her keys outside her apartment building, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Two men in suits sat inside, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. A chill ran down her spine, but she brushed off the feeling. Living in the D.C. area meant seeing government officials and security personnel everywhere. It was probably nothing. Sarah got into her car and started the engine, checking her rearview mirror out of habit. The black sedan's engine started at the same time. As she pulled out of her parking spot, the sedan followed at a distance. Sarah's heart began to race slightly. She made a right turn at the next intersection, and sure enough, the sedan turned right as well. This couldn't be a coincidence. She had been trained since childhood to be aware of her surroundings, an unfortunate necessity given her father's position, but she had never actually been followed before. Sarah decided to test her suspicions. She made a series of random turns through the residential neighborhood, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter with each turn. The sedan stayed with her, maintaining the same distance. These weren't federal agents providing protection. She would have been informed. Her father's security team always coordinated with her when they felt additional measures were necessary. Panic started to set in as Sarah realized she was being actively pursued by unknown individuals. She reached for her phone to call her father, but then hesitated. Was she overreacting? Maybe these were just people going in the same direction. But deep down, she knew better. Her instincts, sharpened by years of security briefings and safety protocols, told her she was in danger. The community center was still 15 minutes away, but Sarah didn't want to lead these people there and potentially put the families she worked with at risk. Instead, she decided to head toward the nearest police station. She had never had to use her father's name or position for anything, and she hoped she wouldn't have to now. But if these men meant her harm, she needed help. As she changed course toward the police station, the sedan's behavior became more aggressive. It moved closer, and Sarah could see in her side mirror that there were definitely two men inside. The passenger was speaking rapidly into what looked like a radio or phone. Her breathing became shallow as fear gripped her chest. Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, her Honda struggling to gain speed as she navigated through morning traffic. She weaved between cars, using every defensive driving technique she had been taught. The sedan stayed with her, its powerful engine easily keeping pace. Other drivers honked as both vehicles moved aggressively through traffic, but Sarah couldn't worry about traffic etiquette now. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly swerved into another lane. It was an unknown number, but something told her to answer. With trembling fingers, she activated the speakerphone while keeping her eyes on the road and the sedan behind her. "Miss Martinez," a gruff voice said through the speaker. "Pull over immediately. This is Detective Johnson with the Metropolitan Police Department. You're wanted for questioning in connection with a federal investigation." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What investigation? I haven't done anything wrong." "Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. Make this easy on everyone and pull over now. Don't make us chase you through the city." "I want to see identification," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I want to verify who you are before I stop my vehicle." There was silence on the line for a moment. Then the detective's voice returned, harder now. "Miss Martinez, you're only making this worse for yourself. Pull over immediately or we'll be forced to use other methods." Sarah looked in her rearview mirror and saw the sedan moving even closer. These men, whoever they were, seemed determined to stop her. But something didn't feel right about the entire situation. If they were legitimate law enforcement, why hadn't they shown badges? Why were they chasing her through traffic instead of using proper police vehicles with lights and sirens? Her father had always told her to trust her instincts, and right now every instinct screamed that she was in serious trouble. She made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of pulling over, she pressed the gas pedal to the floor and headed straight for the FBI field office downtown. If she could just reach federal property, she would be safe. The Honda's engine strained as Sarah pushed it beyond its limits. Buildings blurred past her windows as she raced through the city streets, the black sedan now openly pursuing her with no pretense of stealth. Her phone continued to ring, but she ignored it. In the distance, she could see the federal building growing larger. Just a few more blocks and she would be safe. But safety felt very far away as the sedan suddenly accelerated and pulled alongside her car. The passenger window rolled down, and Sarah caught a glimpse of a man's face before she forced herself to look ahead. Whatever was happening, whoever these people were, she was about to find out if her father's lessons about survival would be enough to save her life. The FBI field office loomed ahead like a fortress of glass and steel, but Sarah wasn't sure she would make it. The black sedan had pulled alongside her Honda, and she could see the passenger leaning out slightly, shouting something she couldn't hear over the roar of engines and city traffic. Her hands were slick with sweat as she gripped the steering wheel, weaving between cars with desperate precision. Suddenly, the sedan swerved toward her, trying to force her off the road. Sarah yanked her steering wheel to the right, her tires squealing as she barely avoided a collision with a parked delivery truck. The maneuver sent her Honda onto the sidewalk for a terrifying moment before she managed to steer back onto the street. Pedestrians scattered, some shouting and pointing, others pulling out phones to record what looked like a high-speed chase scene from a movie. "This is insane," Sarah muttered to herself, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the engine noise. She had never imagined that her normal, quiet life would explode into chaos like this. The federal building was just 2 blocks away, now, but those blocks felt like miles. Her phone rang again, the same unknown number. This time, desperation made her answer even as she sped through a yellow light that was quickly turning red. "Stop running, Miss Martinez," the voice said, calmer now, but with an underlying threat. "You're only making this harder on yourself. We know who your father is, and that's exactly why you need to come with us quietly." Sarah's blood turned to ice. They knew about her father. This wasn't a random crime or a case of mistaken identity. Someone had specifically targeted her because she was the FBI director's daughter. But who would be bold enough to kidnap the daughter of one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the country? "Who are you?" she demanded, taking a sharp right turn that made her tires scream in protest. "What do you want?" "All will be explained once you stop running. But if you continue this chase, innocent people are going to get hurt and that blood will be on your hands." As if to emphasize the point, the sedan suddenly accelerated and cut in front of a city bus. The bus driver slammed on his brakes and Sarah watched in horror as the massive vehicle skidded sideways, blocking 2 lanes of traffic. Cars behind the bus crashed into each other in a chain reaction of metal and glass. She could hear the screams and see people stumbling out of their damaged vehicles. Tears of frustration and guilt streamed down Sarah's face. These men were right about one thing. Innocent people were getting hurt because of her. But she also knew that if she stopped, if she let them take her, the consequences could be even worse. Her father had enemies. People who would love nothing more than to use her as leverage against him. The federal building was just 1 block away now. Sarah could see the security barriers and the guards at the entrance. If she could just reach the perimeter, she would be on federal property with federal protection. But the sedan wasn't giving up. It had recovered from causing the bus accident and was gaining on her again. Sarah made a desperate decision. She turned her Honda directly toward the federal building's main entrance, driving straight at the security checkpoint. The guards saw her coming and immediately went into action, some drawing weapons while others scrambled to activate the barriers. "Federal emergency!" Sarah screamed out her window as she approached the checkpoint. "I'm Sarah Martinez. My father is FBI Director Robert Martinez." The guards hesitated for a crucial second, recognizing the name even as they processed the surreal scene of a young woman in a Honda being chased by men in a black sedan. That moment of hesitation was all Sarah needed. She slammed on her brakes just as her car reached the security perimeter, the Honda sliding to a stop mere feet from the reinforced barriers. Before the car had fully stopped, Sarah was out and running. Toward the guards, her hands raised to show she wasn't armed. "Please help me," she shouted. "Those men have been chasing me. I'm the FBI director's daughter." The guards immediately moved to protect her, creating a human shield between Sarah and the approaching sedan. But to everyone's surprise, the black car didn't flee when faced with federal security. Instead, it pulled up calmly to the checkpoint and both men got out with their hands visible. "Officers," the driver called out, his voice steady and professional. "Detective Ray Johnson, Metropolitan Police Department." He slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a badge and identification. "This woman is wanted for questioning in connection with a federal terrorism investigation." Sarah felt the world spin around her. "That's impossible. I haven't done anything. I volunteer at a community center teaching English." The passenger, a younger man with sharp eyes, also produced identification. "Detective Mike Stevens, also Metro PD. Miss Martinez, you've led us on quite a chase, but it's over now. We have a warrant for your arrest." The federal guards looked between Sarah and the two detectives, clearly unsure how to proceed. This was unprecedented. The FBI director's daughter being pursued by local police who claimed to have an arrest warrant. "I want to call my father," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I have the right to make a phone call." Detective Johnson nodded. "Of course. But first you need to be processed. The charges are serious. Conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism, providing material support to terrorist organizations, and money laundering." Sarah staggered as if she'd been physically hit. "Terrorism? Money laundering? This is completely insane. I'm a law school graduate who teaches immigrants English. Check my background, check my records." "We have checked your records, Miss Martinez," Detective Stevens said, pulling out a manila folder. "We have bank records showing large cash deposits into accounts linked to known terrorist cells. We have surveillance footage of you meeting with suspected terrorists. We have communications intercepts that mention your name specifically." "That's impossible," Sarah whispered, but even as she said it, a terrible realization was beginning to dawn on her. Someone had set her up, and they had done it very carefully. The question was why, and who had the resources and motivation to frame the FBI director's daughter for terrorism. The federal guards were calling for backup and trying to reach FBI headquarters to verify Sarah's identity and get guidance on the unprecedented situation. Sarah stood there surrounded by law enforcement officers, feeling more alone and terrified than she ever had in her life. But even through her fear, her mind was racing. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to frame her for terrorism. They had created false bank records, doctored surveillance footage, and somehow intercepted communications. This wasn't the work of common criminals. This was sophisticated government-level manipulation, and if someone could do all that, what else were they capable of? More importantly, was her father safe, or was this just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than a simple frame job? The FBI field office's interrogation room felt smaller than Sarah had imagined it would be. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the metal table where she sat with her hands cuffed in front of her. Despite being in a federal building, she had been turned over to the Metropolitan Police detectives who insisted their warrant took precedence. The federal guards had reluctantly complied, though Sarah noticed they had stationed agents outside the interrogation room. Detective Johnson sat across from her, spreading files and photographs across the table like he was laying out a winning poker hand. Detective Stevens paced behind him, occasionally stopping to lean over Sarah's shoulder as he pointed to various pieces of evidence. The whole scene felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's nightmare. "Let's start from the beginning," Johnson said, opening the first file. 3 months ago, you opened a bank account at First National Bank using your real name. Nothing suspicious about that. But then, over the next 12 weeks, you made 17 deposits totaling $347,000 in cash. Sarah stared at the bank statements in disbelief. They showed her signature, her address, even her social security number. But she had never opened that account, never made those deposits. "This is fake," she said quietly. "I work part-time at a community center. I make maybe $400 a week. Where would I get that kind of money?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Stevens said, sliding a photograph in front of her. "This surveillance photo was taken outside the bank on March 15th. Care to explain what you're doing here?" The photograph showed a woman who looked exactly like Sarah walking into the bank, carrying what appeared to be a large envelope. But Sarah knew with absolute certainty that she had never been to that bank in her life. On March 15th, she had been at Georgetown taking her final exams. "This isn't me," Sarah said, studying the photograph more carefully. The woman in the picture had the same hair, the same build, even the same way of walking. But something was off about the face, subtle differences that would be impossible to detect unless you knew what to look for. "Right," Johnson said sarcastically. "It's your evil twin. Miss Martinez, we have 17 different surveillance photos of you making these deposits. We have your signature on the deposit slips. We have your fingerprints on the bank documents." Sarah's mind raced. Fingerprints could be lifted and transferred with enough skill and resources. Signatures could be forged, especially if someone had access to her personal documents. But the surveillance photos were the most disturbing part. Someone had either found a woman who looked remarkably similar to her, or they had used sophisticated technology to create fake footage. "I want to call my father," Sarah said again, but Johnson shook his head. "Your father has already been notified of your arrest. In fact, he's the one who authorized us to proceed with the investigation despite your family connection. Director Martinez is very committed to justice even when it involves his own family." This hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her father knew about the charges and hadn't tried to stop them? That seemed impossible. Robert Martinez was many things. Tough, demanding, sometimes emotionally distant. But he would never abandon his daughter unless he truly believed she was guilty. Stevens opened another file and pulled out transcripts of phone conversations. "These are communications intercepts from known terrorist cell leader Amara Hassan. Notice anything familiar?" Sarah read the transcripts with growing horror. The conversations were between Hassan and an unknown female, voice discussing money transfers and operational plans. But what made her blood run cold was that the woman's voice was identified in the transcript notes as Subject SM, confirmed voice match Sarah Martinez, through audio analysis. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered. "I've never spoken to any terrorists. I don't even know who Amara Hassan is." "Really?" Johnson pulled out another photograph, this one showing Sarah sitting in a coffee shop across from a Middle Eastern woman. "This was taken 2 weeks ago at Cafe Luna in Georgetown. You met with Hassan for 47 minutes. Our lip readers confirmed you discussed financial transactions and upcoming operations." Sarah stared at the photograph in shock. It showed her clearly, wearing a blue sweater she definitely owned, sitting in a coffee shop she had been to many times. But she had never met with anyone there except her study group from law school. On closer inspection, she realized this photo was taken the day she had met with her friend Jessica to discuss bar exam preparation. "That's Jessica Rodriguez," Sarah said, pointing to the woman across from her in the photo. "She's a law student at Georgetown. We were studying for the bar exam." Stevens laughed coldly. "Jessica Rodriguez is a cover identity for Amara Hassan. She's been using that name and fake documentation for 3 years while recruiting assets in the DC area." The room seemed to spin around Sarah. Jessica, her friend for 2 years, the woman she had shared her hopes and fears with, was a terrorist recruiter? It seemed impossible, but then again, everything happening to her seemed impossible. "Even if that's true," Sarah said desperately, "it doesn't prove I knew who she really was. Maybe she recruited me without me knowing it. Maybe I was being manipulated." "Maybe," Johnson agreed. "But then, there's this." He slid a final photograph across, The table. This one showed Sarah in her apartment, apparently counting large stacks of cash while talking on the phone. The timestamp showed it was taken just 5 days ago. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. She remembered that day clearly. She had been alone in her apartment, working on a pro bono immigration case for the community center. She had never had large amounts of cash, and she certainly hadn't been on the phone. "How did you get photographs from inside my apartment?" she demanded. "We've been watching you for months, Miss Martinez. Your activities raised red flags in our terrorism task force database. The photos, the bank records, the communications. It all paints a clear picture of someone who's been radicalized and recruited to support terrorist activities." Sarah slumped back in her chair, overwhelmed by the weight of evidence against her. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to frame her, but the frame was so perfect, so complete, that even she was beginning to doubt her own memories. Could she somehow have been involved without realizing it? Could Jessica have manipulated her more thoroughly than she understood? But then she thought about her father. Robert Martinez had spent his entire career fighting terrorism. He knew how these investigations worked, how evidence was gathered and evaluated. If he had authorized this arrest, it meant he either truly believed she was guilty, or he was being deceived as thoroughly as everyone else. "I want to speak to my father directly," Sarah said, finding her voice again. "Not through intermediaries, not through official channels. I want to talk to him face to face." Johnson and Stevens exchanged looks. "That's not possible right now," Stevens said. "Director Martinez is dealing with a national security crisis related to your case. But I can tell you that he's reviewed all the evidence personally, and he agrees that the case against you is solid." Sarah felt tears beginning to form in her eyes, but she forced them back. Crying wouldn't help her now. If her father truly believed she was guilty, she would have to find a way to prove her innocence on her own. But first, she needed to understand exactly how deep this conspiracy went, and who had the resources to pull it off. "I want a lawyer," she said firmly. "I want the best criminal defense attorney in Washington, and I want to see all the evidence against me, every photograph, every document, every transcript." "Of course," Johnson said. "That's your right. But Miss Martinez, I hope you understand the seriousness of these charges. Terrorism, material support, money laundering. You're looking at life in federal prison if convicted. Your best option might be to cooperate, tell us who else is involved, and hope for a reduced sentence." Sarah looked him directly in the eyes. "I can't tell you about people I don't know and crimes I didn't commit. But I promise you this. I'm going to prove my innocence, and when I do, the people who did this to me are going to pay." The holding cell at the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department was everything Sarah had hoped never to experience. Cold concrete walls, a thin mattress on a metal bench, and the constant sound of other inmates talking, arguing, or crying echoed through the corridor. She had been there for 18 hours, and her lawyer still hadn't arrived. Every time she asked about legal representation, the guards told her that her attorney was being processed through security clearance due to the classified nature of her case. Sarah sat on the narrow bench, trying to piece together how someone could have orchestrated such an elaborate frame job. The evidence against her wasn't just convincing, it was perfect. Too perfect. Real terrorists made mistakes, left digital footprints, had inconsistencies in their stories. But everything in her case was flawlessly documented, which suggested either an incredibly sophisticated criminal organization or someone with government-level resources. Her thoughts were interrupted when a guard appeared at her cell. "Martinez, you have a visitor," he announced, unlocking the door. "Attorney meeting room." Sarah followed the guard down a long corridor, her heart racing with hope that finally someone was here to help her. The attorney meeting room was small and private, with just a table and 2 chairs. But when the door opened, Sarah's hope turned to shock. Sitting at the table wasn't a lawyer, it was her father. FBI Director Robert Martinez looked older than when she had seen him just 2 weeks earlier at their monthly dinner. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his silver hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. "Sarah," he said quietly as she sat down across from him. I'm so sorry. Dad? Sarah's voice broke despite her efforts to stay strong. What's happening to me? Why didn't you stop this? Robert Martinez looked at his daughter with eyes full of pain. Because I can't. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and if I intervened, it would look like corruption at the highest levels of the FBI. But more than that, Sarah, I need to know the truth. Did you do this? The question hit Sarah like a slap. Her own father, the man who had taught her about justice and integrity, was asking if she was a terrorist. No, Sarah said firmly. Dad, I swear on Mom's grave, I had nothing to do with terrorism or money laundering or any of it. Someone has set me up, and they've done it so well that even you believe I might be guilty. Robert leaned forward, studying his daughter's face with the same intensity he used when interrogating suspects. After 30 years in law enforcement, he prided himself on being able to detect deception. But looking at Sarah now, all he saw was the same honest, determined young woman he had raised. Then we have a problem, he said quietly. Because if you're innocent, it means someone has penetrated our security system so deeply that they can create false evidence, manipulate surveillance footage, and forge documents well enough to fool federal investigators. Is that possible? Sarah asked. Theoretically, yes, but it would require resources and access that very few organizations possess. We're talking about either a foreign intelligence service with years of preparation or someone inside our own government with the highest level clearances. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. You think someone inside the FBI is doing this to me? I don't know, Robert admitted, but I've been reviewing your case file personally, and there are things that don't add up. The evidence is too clean, too complete. Real criminals leave loose ends, make mistakes. But in your case, every piece of evidence perfectly supports the terrorism narrative. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a photograph. This picture allegedly shows you meeting with Amara Hassan at Cafe Luna. But I noticed something interesting. Look at the timestamp and the lighting. Sarah studied the image carefully. The timestamp says 2:47 p.m., but the lighting looks like early morning or late evening. Exactly. And look at this. He swiped to another image, showing the same cafe, from a different angle. This was taken by a tourist at 2:47 p.m. on the same day. Notice the shadows, the quality of light. It's completely different from the surveillance photo allegedly showing you. Hope began to flicker in Sarah's chest. So, the photo was faked? I think so, but proving it is another matter. The photo manipulation was done by someone with access to sophisticated technology. And there's something else. Robert lowered his voice. The investigation into your case was fast-tracked through channels I didn't authorize. Someone with significant influence pushed this through the system while I was dealing with other matters. Who has that kind of power? Very few people. Deputy Director Patricia Walsh, National Security Advisor David Chen, or someone at the CIA with counterterrorism authority. The problem is, I don't know who I can trust anymore. Sarah leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the implications. Dad, if high-level government officials are involved in framing me, how do we fight back? They control the evidence, they control the investigation. We need to find out who's behind this and why, Robert said. But I can't do it through official channels. If there's a conspiracy at high levels, using FBI resources would tip them off and make things worse for both of us. Then what do we do? Robert was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with a decision that went against everything he believed about proper procedure and chain of command. I have contacts outside the government, people who owe me favors from cases we've worked together. Private investigators, former agents, computer specialists who aren't bound by federal regulations. You're talking about going outside the system, Sarah realized. That could destroy your career. Sarah, you're my daughter. If I have to choose between my career and your life, there's no choice. He reached across the table and took her hand. But I need you to be completely honest with me about everything. Every person you've met, every place you've been, every detail of your life for the past 6 months. If we're going to find who's doing this, we need to understand how they got close enough to you to create such convincing evidence. Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through her recent memories. There's something else I should tell you. Jessica Rodriguez, the woman they claim is really Amara Hassan. She knew things about me that I had never told her. Personal things about our family, about Mom's death, about your work. I thought she was just being a good friend, listening and remembering details. But now I realize she was gathering intelligence. What kind of details? She knew about the security protocols at our house when I was growing up. She knew about the time you had to relocate us temporarily when you were investigating the Chicago terrorism case. She even knew about Mom's medical records from her cancer treatment. I never told her any of that. Robert's face darkened. Someone gave her access to classified family protection files. That information exists in only 3 places: FBI personnel records, NSA family security databases, and CIA counterintelligence files. So we're definitely dealing with someone inside the government. Yes, and someone with access to multiple agencies' databases. That's a very short list of people, Sarah. Maybe 20 individuals in the entire federal government have that level of clearance. A guard knocked on the door, signaling that their time was almost up. Robert squeezed his daughter's hand. I'm going to get you out of this, Sarah. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be dangerous. The people who did this have already shown they're willing to destroy innocent lives to achieve their goals. What about you, Dad? If you investigate this unofficially, won't that put you at risk too? Robert Martinez smiled grimly. I've been fighting criminals and terrorists for 30 years, Sarah. I'm not about to let them destroy my family now. He stood up as the guard opened the door. Hold on a little longer. I promise I'm going to find the truth. As her father left, Sarah felt a mixture of hope and terror. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone believed her and was fighting for her. But she also realized that the conspiracy against her was bigger and more dangerous than she had imagined. Someone with immense power wanted her destroyed, and they wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who got in their way, including the FBI director himself. 3 days after Robert Martinez's visit to his daughter, he sat in his FBI office reviewing intelligence reports, but his mind was entirely focused on Sarah's case. He had quietly reached out to Marcus Chen, a former FBI cybercrime specialist who now worked as a private consultant. Marcus owed Robert several favors from high-profile cases they had worked together, and more importantly, he had no current ties to the federal government that could compromise his investigation. The secure phone on Robert's desk buzzed, a direct line that only a handful of people had access to. Martinez here. Director, it's Marcus. I've been looking into your daughter's situation, and what I've found is deeply disturbing. Robert immediately activated the white noise generator in his office, a device that made electronic surveillance nearly impossible. Tell me. The digital evidence against Sarah has been manufactured using military-grade technology. The surveillance, photos showing her with Hassan were created using deepfake video technology, but not the kind available to civilian hackers. This is government-level AI, the type used by intelligence agencies for psychological operations. Can you prove that? I'm working on it. But there's something else. The bank account supposedly opened by Sarah? The signature authentication was bypassed using administrative override codes that only exist within the federal banking oversight system. Someone with high-level access to Treasury Department databases created that account and the deposit records. Robert felt his worst fears being confirmed. How high-level are we talking? Assistant secretary level or above. Maybe 15 people in the entire government have that kind of access. But Robert, there's something even more troubling. I traced the digital fingerprints of the computer systems used to create this evidence. They all point back to a classified project called Operation Mirror. The name hit Robert like a physical blow. Operation Mirror was a highly classified CIA program designed to create false identities and fake evidence for deep cover operations. Only a handful of people even knew it existed, and Robert was one of them. Marcus, stop your investigation immediately, Robert said urgently. You're walking into something that could get you killed. It's too late for that. I've already found too much, and if I disappear now, it'll just confirm their fears that someone's onto them. But I need you to know, Operation Mirror was supposedly shut down 3 years ago, after it was compromised by foreign intelligence. If someone's using mirror technology to frame Sarah, it means either the program was never really shut down, or someone stole the technology before it was destroyed. Robert's mind raced through the implications. If Operation Mirror technology was being used against his daughter, it meant the conspiracy reached into the highest levels of the CIA. But why would they target Sarah? What could she possibly know that threatened them? Director Martinez? His secretary's voice came through the intercom. Deputy Director Walsh is here to see you. She says it's urgent. Patricia Walsh was one of the few people who knew about Operation Mirror. She was also someone with access to the Treasury Department systems Marcus had identified. Robert felt a chill as he realized his deputy might be involved in the conspiracy against Sarah. "Send her in," Robert said to his secretary. Then, quickly added to Marcus, "Get out of Washington immediately. Go somewhere they can't find you and continue working. I'll contact you when it's safe." Patricia Walsh entered the office with her usual confident stride, but Robert noticed something different about her demeanor. She seemed nervous, almost guilty, as she sat down across from his desk. "Bob, we need to talk about Sarah's case," she said without preamble. "I've been reviewing the evidence and I think there might be some irregularities." Robert kept his expression neutral, though internally he was on high alert. "What kind of irregularities?" "The timeline doesn't work. Some of the surveillance photos show Sarah in locations where we have proof she was somewhere else. Her phone GPS data contradicts the terrorism investigation evidence. And you're just noticing this now?" Robert asked carefully. Patricia looked uncomfortable. "I've been ordered not to dig too deeply into the case. National Security Advisor Chen said the evidence was solid and we shouldn't waste resources double-checking." But Bob, I think your daughter is being framed." Robert studied his deputy's face, trying to determine if this was genuine concern or elaborate manipulation. "Who gave Chen authority over an FBI investigation?" "The president, apparently. Chen convinced him that Sarah's case was connected to a larger counterterrorism operation that required coordination.